On February 10, 2026, a message appeared inside a Bitcoin wallet connected to the Nancy Guthrie ransom letters. 4 words: "We are ready to talk." The other side never responded. That silence told investigators something specific about the people behind this crime. Not that they were afraid, not that they were incompetent, that they were never interested in a transaction, that the Bitcoin wallet was never going to be paid into, that the ransom was always a prop, a mechanism to generate publicity, to guarantee national attention, to broadcast the suffering of a specific person on the largest possible stage. 110 days later, the sheriff of Pima County just confirmed something that changes the forensic picture of this investigation more significantly than anything he has said publicly since February. He said, "We have DNA that is unknown, who the contributor or depositor is, but I think they're getting closer to finding out who that was." Unknown DNA. At the FBI laboratory in Quantico, getting closer to identification. And on the same day, a retired detective introduced a theory that gives the architecture of this crime a specific criminal taxonomy, one that connects it to a documented, prosecuted, globally tracked criminal model. A model that explains the doofus at the door and the sophisticated operation behind him. A model that points toward a mastermind who was never physically present at Nancy's home and whose DNA is not at the crime scene, but whose digital footprint is in the permanent record of the blockchain. This is Forensic Disconnect, Day 110. And today we are covering the wrench attack theory, what it means that Nanos just confirmed unknown DNA exists, what Quantico's involvement tells us about where this investigation actually is, and the specific detail about Nanos' relationship with the Guthrie family that reveals how the management of this case has been split between local and federal in ways that the official communications have been carefully obscuring. Before we go further, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We cover this case every single day with the depth and specificity that the daily news cycle cannot provide. Subscribe. Let's start with what Nanos said. Because the specific language he used, unknown contributor, unknown depositor, getting closer, is more revealing than the headline version suggests. Nanos has been saying variations of "we are getting closer" since February. That phrase is deliberately vague. It satisfies the public demand for progress updates without disclosing anything about the actual investigative picture. Getting closer in the technical sense, eliminating wrong answers, narrowing the field, is true every single day of any active investigation. It tells you nothing about the distance remaining. We have DNA that is unknown, who the contributor or depositor is, but I think they're getting closer to finding out who that was is different. This names a specific piece of evidence. It describes the specific forensic challenge, and it characterizes the state of the analysis with a directness that the usual getting closer language deliberately avoids. Unknown contributor. Unknown depositor. There is biological evidence in this investigation from a person whose identity has not yet been established. That evidence is now at the FBI laboratory at Quantico, the most advanced forensic analysis facility in the country, alongside whatever other laboratories are working on the evidence in parallel. Nanos also said the labs, plural, are working on the DNA. This is the first confirmation that multiple facilities are involved simultaneously. Not one sample in one lab waiting for one process. Multiple analytical approaches, multiple facilities, multiple parallel tracks, all aimed at the same unknown contributor. Quantico is not a generic federal facility. The FBI laboratory at Quantico is the largest forensic laboratory in the world. It processes more than 1 million examinations per year. Its DNA casework unit has contributed to the resolution of some of the most significant criminal cases in American history. When evidence moves to Quantico, it enters a facility where the specific challenges of this case, the complex mixture, the rootless hair, the unknown contributor, are not novel problems requiring improvised solutions. They are routine challenges addressed through validated methodologies refined over decades of casework. The move from wherever the DNA was being processed to Quantico is not routine. It is a statement about the seriousness with which the federal government is treating this evidence. It reflects an investigative assessment that the biological evidence in this case warrants the fullest possible analytical resources available anywhere in the American legal system. And Nanos confirmed they are getting closer to identifying the unknown contributor. Before we go further, drop a comment right now. What do you think the unknown DNA at Quantico is going to show? Who do you think the unknown contributor is? Drop it below. Now let's go to the wrench attack theory, because this is the most conceptually significant development in the public analysis of this case since the puppet master theory from Ann Burgess, and it deserves to be examined carefully. The term wrench attack originated in a 2009 webcomic about cryptography. The comic illustrated the fundamental asymmetry between technical security and physical vulnerability. You can have the strongest encryption in the world protecting your Bitcoin wallet, but the person who controls the wallet is a human being, and human beings are vulnerable to physical pressure in ways that encryption is not. The $5 wrench in the comic is not a metaphor for a cheap solution. It is a statement about the limits of technical security when faced with physical coercion. The concept evolved over the following years from a webcomic punchline into a documented criminal methodology. As cryptocurrency adoption grew through the 2010s and 2020s, law enforcement agencies internationally began tracking cases in which cryptocurrency holders were targeted for physical extortion by operatives who understood both the technical and physical dimensions of the attack. The modern wrench attack has a specific operational structure. A mastermind, typically operating remotely, often internationally, frequently through encrypted communications, identifies a target with significant cryptocurrency holdings or access to significant financial resources. The mastermind has technical capabilities, blockchain analysis to identify targets, cryptocurrency infrastructure to receive payments, operational security to maintain anonymity. But the mastermind needs a physical component. Someone who can actually be at the target's location, someone who can apply the pressure. So the mastermind recruits a local executor, a street-level criminal, someone with physical capabilities and local knowledge. The mastermind provides the intelligence, the planning, and the financial incentive. The executor provides the body at the door. 2 different people, 2 different skill sets, 2 different risk profiles, connected by an encrypted transaction. Lisa J. Miller, a retired detective and law enforcement executive at the Colorado Attorney General's office who has been professionally tracking the wrench attack trend, applied this framework to the Nancy Guthrie case in a conversation with Fox News Digital, and what she said is specific and important. She said, "In the beginning of this Nancy Guthrie case, we're all taking a look at it, and we're seeing things that just didn't seem to fit. What we're seeing with Nancy Guthrie is not a typical wrench attack. Not a typical wrench attack. She is not saying the theory is wrong. She is saying it is a variant, and the specific variant she identified is important. In a typical wrench attack, the goal is financial. The mastermind wants cryptocurrency and uses physical violence to get it. The operation ends when the target complies. In the Nancy Guthrie case, the financial demand was the cover story. The ransom notes were never going to be paid. The Bitcoin wallet sat empty. The FBI opened a negotiating channel on February 10th with a $152 signal, and the other side went silent. Because a response was never part of the plan, because the money was never the goal, the atypical feature is the motive, not financial extraction, something else. Something that the public suffering of Savannah Guthrie accomplished, and that the public resolution of the case, the payment, the release of Nancy, would have ended. The mastermind did not want the transaction to complete. The mastermind wanted the suffering to continue, publicly, nationally, on the Today Show, every morning. And then she said the thing about the executor that is the most forensically specific characterization of the porch guy that any expert has offered. She said, "Look at his getup. Look at how he carries his firearm. The guy comes across as a bit of a doofus. Yet there are some very sophisticated elements to this case that falls in line with what we see in a traditional wrench attack. A doofus at the door. A sophisticated operation behind him. That tension, the gap between the operational clumsiness of the person visible on the doorbell camera and the sophistication of the ransom communication infrastructure, the Bitcoin wallet, the scripture language notes, the media targeting strategy, is the specific signature of the wrench attack model. The mastermind provides the sophistication. The executor provides the physical presence. The executor does not need to be sophisticated. He needs to be present and willing to do things that the mastermind, operating safely from behind a keyboard somewhere, could not do themselves. Casey Jordan said he was 27 or 28 years old. Definitely local. A prowler burglar. Brucato called him a hothead with an ego. Miller called him a doofus. 3 different experts, 3 different frameworks, arriving at the same basic characterization. A young local man with limited operational sophistication who was recruited to do a physical job by someone significantly more capable than himself. That young local man's DNA is unknown. And it is at Quantico. Getting closer to being identified. Now let's go to the specific thing Nanos said about his relationship with the Guthrie family. Because this detail, which has been reported as a simple acknowledgement that he is no longer in direct contact with them, is actually more complex and more revealing than the headline suggests. People magazine asked Nanos directly, "Are you in contact with Nancy's family members?" He said, "I personally am not," and then he added, "If they need the family for anything, they get in touch with them and the family. It works both ways." And then he said something specific about Savannah. He said, "We text or every now and then a phone call. Parse that carefully." He is not in direct contact with the family as a unit. The family's liaison with the investigation is being handled by other investigators, meaning the FBI has effectively assumed the primary family communication role. But he is in direct personal contact with Savannah specifically. Texting, occasional phone calls. This is a specific and deliberate distinction. The institutional communication between the investigation and the family has been handed to federal investigators. But the personal communication between the sheriff and the most publicly visible member of that family, the NBC News anchor, whose national platform is the specific reason this case has national visibility, continues through the sheriff's personal phone. Why does this distinction matter? Because it reflects a specific management of the accountability story. The family as a whole, Annie, Cameron, and the extended family who are actually living inside this loss every day, are being managed through federal investigators. But Savannah, the one whose public statements shaped the national narrative of this case, is still in direct personal contact with the sheriff. The institutional relationship is federal. The media relationship is local. And the person who controls the media relationship is the same person whose department produced the Shwakwar show, who kept the FBI out for 4 days, who scolded the county assessor for helping the FBI, whose deputy's union president called the first week a shinsho, and whose 22-page unsworn letter explaining 8 suspensions as a towing dispute is sitting at the Department of Justice under a perjury referral. He texts Savannah. That is the access he has preserved. Now let's talk about what the wrench attack framework means for the 2 parallel forensic paths that are currently running in this investigation. If Miller is right, if this is a wrench attack with atypical features, with a remote mastermind and a local executor, the forensic evidence splits cleanly between 2 categories. The executor's evidence. DNA, fingerprints, biological trace material from the person who was physically at Nancy's home on the night of January 31st. The unknown contributor at Quantico, the hair at Astria, the touch DNA from the surfaces in Nancy's home. All of it from a person whose physical presence at the scene was the specific function they were recruited to provide. That evidence leads to the executor's identity through genealogy and database matching. The mastermind's evidence, not biological, digital. The Bitcoin wallet and its transaction history. The encrypted communications through which the mastermind recruited and directed the executor. The blockchain record of how the wallet was created, funded, and maintained. The specific device and internet connection used to create the wallet. The financial trail that connects the mastermind's resources to the operation. That evidence leads to the mastermind's identity through blockchain forensics and digital analysis. 2 parallel paths. 2 different forensic disciplines. 2 different FBI units working on them simultaneously. The DNA unit at Quantico and the cyber forensics unit working the blockchain. Both tracks running, both getting closer. And Steve Moore said this week, if you find 1 hair, there are probably 10 more. The unknown contributor DNA that Nanos confirmed today is almost certainly not a single sample. It is the visible tip of a forensic evidence collection that runs deeper than what the public has been told. Multiple samples. Multiple surfaces, multiple pieces of biological material from the person who was there, all of them pointing toward the same unknown contributor. That unknown contributor has a name, The name is in the genealogy databases through their family members who uploaded consumer DNA results to GED Match or Family Tree DNA. The name is in the law enforcement records through the prior criminal contact that Brucato confirmed is almost certainly part of this person's history. The name is getting closer to being established through the parallel analytical tracks running at Quantico and Estria. And the mastermind has a name. The name is in the blockchain through the digital trail of the wallet creation and the encrypted communications that connected them to the executor. The FBI's blockchain analytics capabilities, the same capabilities that allow them to call cryptocurrency the ultimate crime scene, have been following that trail for 110 days. 110 days. Unknown contributor, Quantico, wrench attack, mastermind, and executor. 2 paths, 2 names. Now let's talk about what the PCSD's response to the wrench attack theory reveals. The department said, "The Pima County Sheriff's Department has not received any reports referencing wrench attacks in our community." That statement is technically accurate and substantively evasive. Wrench attacks as a labeled criminal category are not a feature of Pima County Sheriff's Department case reports. The taxonomy comes from the cybercriminal and cryptocurrency law enforcement community. Local agencies do not typically classify crimes under the wrench attack label because that label comes from a different institutional context. But Miller was not claiming that the perpetrators filed a police report identifying themselves as wrench attackers. She was claiming that the operational structure of the crime matches the documented wrench attack model. Those are different claims. The PCSD responded to the first. Miller made the second. The specific features she identified: remote mastermind with technical capabilities, local street-level executor, cryptocurrency infrastructure, sophisticated elements combined with the doofus at the door, are all present in the public record of this case. Whether the department has received reports using the word wrench attack is irrelevant. Whether the model maps onto the evidence is the question. And Miller's professional assessment, based on years of tracking this specific criminal trend, is that it does. The FBI, which has been tracking the wrench attack trend across its cybercrime and cryptocurrency units, which has prosecuted cases built on exactly this operational structure, which is now processing both the DNA evidence and the blockchain trail from this case, is the agency that understands this model most comprehensively. And the FBI is fully engaged with this investigation now, past the 4-day exclusion, past the Florida lab delay, with the evidence at Quantico and the blockchain being traced. Now let's hold the complete picture of day 110. Unknown DNA at Quantico. Getting closer to identification. Multiple labs working in parallel. The wrench attack framework maps the architecture. A remote mastermind and a local doofus executor, connected through encrypted channels, the mastermind's fingerprint in the blockchain and the executor's DNA at Quantico. The sheriff texting Savannah personally, while the family's institutional liaison has moved to the FBI. The recall deadline approaching on July 10th. The perjury referral at the Department of Justice. And in the background, steady and invisible and moving at the pace the science requires. The genealogy process waiting for the profile that Quantico and Astria are building. C.C. Moore's team at Parabon Nanolabs, ready to begin the moment the partial profile is sufficient. The process that solved Rex Hoyerman. The process that identified the Golden State Killer after 40 years. Ready to be applied to the unknown contributor at Quantico. The executor quit his job and left his girlfriend the day the story broke. He is either in Mexico or eliminated by the mastermind. His DNA is at Quantico and it is getting closer to producing his name. The mastermind is somewhere behind a screen. Their Bitcoin wallet is in the permanent blockchain record. The FBI has been following the trail for 110 days. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, 5 feet tall, silver hair and blue eyes. She was taken from her home 110 days ago. Her flower pots are still on the back patio. The house has poles and chains across both driveways. The memorial is still there. The unknown DNA is at Quantico. The blockchain is permanent. The wrench attack framework gives the architecture a name. And it can change in a second. Let me go deeper into the specific history of wrench attack prosecutions. Because understanding the cases that have already been resolved under this model explains why the FBI brings specific institutional expertise to the Nancy Guthrie investigation that the PCSD simply does not have. In 2022, a significant wrench attack case was prosecuted in the United States involving a group that targeted cryptocurrency holders across multiple states. The operational structure was precise. An organizer who identified targets through blockchain analysis and social media monitoring, encrypted communications recruiting local executors, physical operations designed to extract cryptocurrency access through coercion. The organizer never appeared at any of the physical operations. The executors did not know the full identity of the organizer. The FBI broke the case through the specific combination of blockchain forensics and digital forensics that is now being applied to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. The blockchain trail from the cryptocurrency payments connected the organizer to the operation, despite their physical absence from every crime scene. The digital forensics on the encrypted communications produced the evidence of recruitment and direction, and the physical evidence, DNA, surveillance footage, cell phone data, connected the executors to the physical crimes. Both the organizer and the executors were identified and prosecuted. The organizer, who had believed that operating remotely through encrypted channels provided complete anonymity, was identified through a combination of blockchain analysis and the specific investigative techniques that the FBI's cyber division has developed specifically for this type of case. The Nancy Guthrie case has the same evidence components. The blockchain trail from the Bitcoin wallet, the physical evidence from the executor at the scene, the digital evidence of the operations communication infrastructure. The FBI has the playbook from previously prosecuted cases, and the specific capabilities being brought to bear, Quantico for the physical evidence, the FBI's blockchain analytics unit for the digital evidence, are precisely the capabilities that resolved those earlier cases. Miller also said something specific about the scale of wrench attack operations that connects directly to the motive question in this case. She said that in the cases she has been tracking, the remote mastermind often has a specific and personal connection to the target. Not a random selection, but a deliberate choice based on a specific grievance, a specific financial relationship, a specific personal history that the mastermind has decided to resolve through violence. The motive that Nanos has protected for 110 days, the specific reason that Nancy Guthrie was selected as the target, is exactly the kind of specific, personal connection that Miller is describing. Not the motive of an opportunistic criminal who identified an 84-year-old woman as a soft target. The motive of a mastermind who had a specific reason to choose this specific family. The wrench attack framework, the puppet master theory, the bad faith from day one assessment from Steve Moore, all of them are pointing toward the same conclusion. A person with a specific grievance, operating remotely with technical capabilities, who recruited a local executor to carry out the physical component of an operation designed to cause maximum suffering to a maximum audience through the specific mechanism of Nancy Guthrie's abduction. That person's motive is known to Nanos. It has been known since day one. And when the blockchain trail reaches their identity, and when the genealogy process from Quantico reaches the executor's identity, the motive will be the piece that confirms the identification. Because the motive will connect the mastermind to the specific grievance that made Nancy Guthrie the target. Now let me talk about the 1 versus 2 debate in the context of the wrench attack theory. Because Miller's specific characterization of the executor, a doofus who comes across as a bit of a doofus, is actually more consistent with the single executor theory than with the multiple perpetrator theory. Jim Clemente argued from the blood evidence that there was one person at the stoop. The blood tells us about the physical contact. One person managing Nancy through the struggle. If 2 people had control of her, she would not have gone to the ground. The wrench attack model is consistent with this. The mastermind recruits one executor for the physical operation, one body at the door, one person with the gun holster and the backpack and the antenna in the pocket. The mastermind provides remote coordination, potentially through the radio or communication device visible in the footage, but the physical execution is one person. The one executor is at the door. The mastermind is elsewhere. The blood shows one person at the stoop. The radio shows the mastermind on the other end of the line. These are not contradictory. They are complementary. One person at the scene, one person behind the scene. The doofus and the mastermind. The wrench and the hand that deployed it. And the doofus's DNA is at Quantico, getting closer to a name. Now let me address the specific significance of Nanos saying we text, or every now and then a phone call with Savannah. because the media management dimension of this case is its own story, and it has not received sufficient analytical attention. Nanos confirmed that the institutional communication between the investigation and the Guthrie family has been handed to federal investigators. The family's liaison with the investigation is now primarily federal. This reflects the reality of where the investigation's center of gravity has shifted, from a local department that spent 33 days treating a crime as a search and rescue operation to a federal investigation with the resources and expertise that this case requires. But Nanos preserved the personal contact with Savannah, the texting, the occasional phone call, the direct line to the most publicly visible member of the family. The person whose public statements shaped the national narrative of this case. Think about the specific power that direct personal access to Savannah Guthrie represents for the sheriff of a county facing a recall election and a perjury referral at the Department of Justice. Savannah is an NBC News anchor with national reach. Her public statements about the investigation, whether she expresses confidence in the local investigators or frustration with them, whether she praises the cooperation or condemns the failures, shape public opinion about this case in ways that have direct political consequences for Nanos. The text messages, the occasional phone calls, the preserved personal relationship with the most powerful media figure connected to this case. Former SWAT Commander Bob Krieger, Supervisor Heinz, Deputy Union President Aaron Cross, the anonymous law enforcement source who told Enton about the rush to judgment, all of them describing institutional failure at the local level, all of them critical of Nanos' leadership. Savannah Guthrie, still texting with the sheriff. That relationship is the specific communication channel that Nanos has been careful to maintain, even as every other communication in this case has deteriorated, been questioned, or been handed to federal investigators. Not because the relationship serves the investigation, because it serves the sheriff. I say all of this not to criticize Savannah. She is a daughter who is doing everything she can to find her mother. She is not responsible for how the sheriff manages his political interests. But understanding the specific dynamic, who preserves access to whom and why, is part of understanding the full picture of how this case has been managed. The family's institutional liaison is now federal. The sheriff texts Savannah. The DNA is at Quantico. The board decided not to act. The recall deadline is July 10th, day 110, all of it running simultaneously. The science and the politics and the accountability and the grief. And it can change in a second. Let me now talk about what the specific convergence of the wrench attack theory and the unknown DNA at Quantico means for the timeline of this investigation. Because the convergence of these two developments on the same day is not coincidental. It reflects the specific stage that the investigation has reached after 110 days. The wrench attack theory is public because investigators, through their public communications and through the expert commentary they have encouraged or permitted, are trying to accomplish something with the public record of this case. When the FBI releases doorbell camera footage, they are trying to identify the executor. When they confirm that DNA is at Quantico, they are signaling to the executor and to anyone who knows the executor that the evidence trail is closing in. When the wrench attack framework enters public discourse with law enforcement endorsement, they are potentially signaling to the mastermind that the operational model has been identified and is being actively investigated. Public communications and active investigations are not just updates for the public. They are also messages to the people the investigation is closing in on. The executor who is in Mexico or in a grave somewhere, or who is still in Tucson, watching every segment, calculating their safety, needs to understand that their DNA is at the most advanced forensic laboratory in the country and that the unknown contributor status is temporary. The mastermind who designed this operation needs to understand that the wrench attack model has been named and that the FBI has the playbook from previously prosecuted cases. Nanos' confirmation that unknown DNA exists is not a routine update. It is a message, getting closer, not because Nanos is trying to be helpful to the public, because the investigation has reached the stage where the pressure on whoever is out there needs to be maintained. Where the person who has been watching every segment and calculating their safety for 110 days needs to understand that the calculation is getting harder to sustain. The tip line is still active. $1 million, completely anonymous. And the person who knows the executor, who watched a 27-year-old local man quit his job and leave his girlfriend on February 1st, who has been carrying that memory while watching the investigation, produce a profile that matches exactly what they saw. That person may be watching this video right now. The wrench attack model gives that person a new lens through which to interpret what they observed. Not just a guy who suddenly quit his job and left town. A street-level executor who was hired by a remote mastermind to be the physical component of a nationally broadcast wrench attack. The doofus at the door. The hired thug. The person whose DNA is now at Quantico. If you watch someone match that profile disappear from your life on February 1st, 2026, call the FBI. 1-800-225-5324. It's anonymous. It's $1 million. And it might be the call that ends 110 days of a family that cannot grieve and can only ache and wonder. Now let's go to what John Ramsey said earlier this week. Because his specific warning to the Guthrie family, delivered from the position of a father whose daughter's murder has never been solved 30 years later, connects the wrench attack theory to the broader accountability story of this case. Ramsey said, "Don't assume the police are doing everything they can do. They may be, but don't assume that. Don't assume they know what they're doing. Really scrutinize what they're doing. Ask questions." He drew the parallel to his own case. It seemed like there was a little bit of a battle between the sheriff and the FBI, and the sheriff kind of wanting to handle it himself. Denver police offered 3 experienced homicide detectives. Boulder had no homicide detective. I got a feeling that may have been the case in the Guthrie case too. Boulder, 1996. Local department, high-profile case, no homicide detective, refused outside help. Killer never identified. 30 years later. Tucson, 2026. Local department, high-profile case, inexperienced lead detective, FBI kept out 4 days. 110 days later, unknown DNA at Quantico. The parallel is not exact. The technologies are different. The FBI's involvement is more substantial than it was in Boulder. The evidence at Quantico and the blockchain trail represent forensic resources that did not exist in 1996. The case is not 30 years old. It is 110 days old. But the structural similarity, the battle, the sheriff wanting to handle it himself, the outside help that arrived late, is specific enough that the man who lived through the John Bonet version felt it was important to name it publicly. Don't assume they know what they're doing. From a man whose daughter's killer has never been found, to a family whose mother has been missing for 110 days. On national media. In the week that unknown DNA arrived at Quantico, the wrench attack theory, the unknown DNA at Quantico, the text messages to Savannah, the John Ramsey warning, the recall deadline on July 10th, the perjury referral at the Department of Justice, the board that decided not to act, all of it simultaneously. All of it converging on the same investigation, all of it building toward the moment when the unknown contributor at Quantico has a name. That moment is coming. The labs are getting closer. The blockchain is being traced. The genealogy process is waiting for the profile. And the person who knows the executor is somewhere watching the wrench attack theory enter the public record and recognizing someone they used to know. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, 5 feet tall, silver hair and blue eyes. She was taken from her home 110 days ago by a doofus at the door who was operating on behalf of someone significantly more dangerous sitting somewhere behind a screen. The doofus's DNA is at Quantico. The mastermind's trail is in the blockchain. 2 paths, 2 names, and it can change in a second. Let me go deeper into the specific forensic science behind what unknown DNA at Quantico actually means in operational terms. Because the public narrative around DNA in this case has been built around a single hair and a complex mixture. And Nanos' confirmation of an unknown contributor suggests the evidence picture is more complex and more substantial than that narrative implies. When forensic scientists at the FBI laboratory encounter an unknown contributor in a DNA sample, they are encountering biological material whose genetic profile does not match anyone currently in their reference databases. Not in CODIS, the combined DNA index system that contains profiles from convicted offenders, arrestees, and forensic samples from unsolved cases across the country. Not in any other reference database they have access to, But unknown does not mean unidentifiable. It means not yet identified through the direct database comparison approach. And direct database comparison is only one of the tools available to investigators at this stage. The forensic genetic genealogy approach that C.C. Moore has been publicly discussing since February does not require a direct database match. It requires a partial profile of sufficient quality to produce matches in the public genealogy databases. The consumer DNA databases populated by people who took ancestry tests and chose to upload their results. The standard for a match in GED match or family tree DNA is different from the standard for a match in CODIS. The genealogy databases identify family relationships rather than direct identity matches. They require less DNA and less complete profiles. The unknown contributor at Quantico is unknown in the CODIS sense. Whether they have family members in GED match or family tree DNA, family members who uploaded their consumer DNA results and thereby created the pathway for a genealogy match, is a different question. And it is the question that the Astrea Laboratory and C.C. Moore's team are positioned to answer. The Quantico analysis and the Astrea analysis are running in parallel. Quantico deconvolutes the mixture, extracts the individual profiles, confirms the unknown contributor's genetic signature. Astrea works the hair sample through SNP profiling to generate the partial profile needed for genealogy comparison. The two processes feed into each other. The profile quality that Astrea is developing informs how specific the genealogy comparison can be. The confirmation from Quantico that the unknown contributor exists validates that the genealogy target is real. When both processes reach sufficient confidence in the profile, when the combination of Astrea's hair work and Quantico's mixture analysis produces a genetic signature with enough resolution for genealogy comparison, C.C. Moore's team begins building family trees. From that moment, the path from unknown contributor to named suspect is the same path that solved 300 cases. The same path that produced Brian Kohberger's name. The same path that produced the Golden State Killer's name after 40 years. The unknown contributor at Quantico is getting closer to having a name. Not because of any single breakthrough. Because the parallel processes have been running for 110 days and they are converging. Now let me talk about the specific detail of the property barriers at Nancy's home in the context of the wrench attack theory. Because the poles and chains and private property, no trespassing signs that have been installed at both driveway entries to the property are not just a response to tourist intrusion. They reflect a specific decision by whoever controls that property about what access to allow and what access to prevent. The property is still in the estate of Nancy Guthrie. It is not an active crime scene. It was released months ago. But it is a location of ongoing evidentiary significance. The barriers are a statement that the location is being controlled, that access is being managed, that the decisions about who can be there and when are being made deliberately. The barriers also tell us something about the sustained public attention to this case. More than 100 days after Nancy's disappearance, enough people were going to that property often enough and intrusively enough to require physical barriers. Arrests have been made, police presence has been heightened, and still they come. This is what it looks like when a case achieves the specific cultural saturation that this one has reached. The people who cannot stop following it are now going there. Some of them are content creators. Some of them are simply people who have been living inside this story for 110 days and feel a specific pull toward the physical location of the narrative they have been part of. The barriers cannot stop the investigation. They cannot stop the DNA processing at Quantico. They cannot stop the blockchain analysis. They cannot stop the genealogy process from producing a name when the profile is ready. They can only manage the physical perimeter of a property that has become, in the public's imagination, the center of the most significant missing persons investigation of this era. The flower pots are still on the back patio, behind the poles and chains. One more thing before we close. The specific timing of the wrench attack theory entering the public record, the same day that Nanos confirmed unknown DNA at Quantico, may not be coincidental. Investigations manage information. The specific combination of a technical framework explaining the architecture of the crime and a confirmation that the executor's biological evidence is at the most advanced forensic laboratory in the country is a specific message to the people the investigation is closing in on. The message is, we know how this was designed. We know who the executor is getting closer to being named. We know the mastermind is in the blockchain. We are coming for both of you. And to the person who knows the executor, the friend, the girlfriend, the co-worker, the roommate who watched a 27-year-old local man quit his job and disappear on February 1st, 2026. The message is, we have his DNA. We are identifying him. And if you know something, now is the time to call. Day 110. Unknown contributor. Quantico. Wrench attack. 2 paths converging. If you have any information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-225-5324. Submit tips at tips@fbi.gov. Call the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. The combined reward is over $1 million, completely anonymous. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Forensic Disconnect. Drop a comment. Does the wrench attack theory change how you see this case? And what do you think the unknown DNA at Quantico is going to show? We read every single comment. Day 110. Unknown contributor. Quantico. 2 paths converging on 2 names. We will be back tomorrow.